Hi, everyone. Hope this week's Drasha, YouTube Devar Torah finds you well. We're still missing everyone here at Shul and wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving. We know it's a tough year. We're with you from a distance, and not being able to get together over the holiday with loved ones and family and neighbors can be very challenging. Certainly not the same, even if some people are getting together. But I want to share with you the ultimate Thanksgiving story. And there's a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, blessed memory, and he was one of the greatest rabbis in the history of Great Britain. Rabbi Dessler was in America in the late 40s, and he had a son here. His son was able to get to America in the 40s, and he said to his son, "Who was able to help you? You're here all alone. How did you do it?" And his son mentioned a number of different people. And his son mentioned the late Laser Silver, Cincinnati, Ohio, one of the leading American rabbis at the time. So Dessler said to his son, "We have to go say thank you to this rabbi for taking care of you, taking time out of his busy day and his schedule with all of his responsibilities to look after you." The son said, "Sure, no problem. I'll get you a phone. We'll schedule some time on a telephone, and you can give him a ring." And the rabbi said, his father, Rabbi Dessler, said to him, "No, we have to do this in person." He said, "But Rabbi Silver lives in Ohio. That's more than 9 hours away." He was undeterred. He took his son. They went via train. They arrived at the home of Rav Silver in Cincinnati in the wee hours of the morning. And sure enough, this Rabbi Silver found them, the great Rabbi Dessler and his son, on his front steps. Early in the morning, they went off to shul. They came back. The rabbi hosted them for breakfast, and he said, "What can I do for you?" He said, "I came to thank you for helping my son get adjusted to the new world, to America." He said, "Oh, it's my pleasure, but how can I help you?" And he said, "No, I just came here to say thank you for everything you've done. My son is all set up here because of you, because of your efforts and what you did for him." He said, "No, really, it's my pleasure, but what brings you to Ohio? What business do you have in Cincinnati? How may I be of assistance to you?" Rav Dessler was able to finally communicate to him that his sole purpose for coming to Cincinnati from the New York area was to thank him in person. And it was a very profound message about Thanksgiving and about giving gratitude. In our parsha this week, in Parshas Veyetze, we have some other understandings of sensitivity. And indeed, we're told that Yaakov worked 7 years. Lavan didn't just want to give off his daughter in marriage to Yaakov right away. He wanted Yaakov to work for it. And Yaakov said, "Fine, we have a deal. I'm going to work in order to make sure that I earn my keep, in order to make sure that I earn the great opportunity of being married to your daughter, Rachel." And as we know, Rachel was not his first wife. His first wife, and the wife that he consummated his marriage with, was Leah. And Rav David Feinstein Zatzal, one of the great American rabbinic luminaries who just recently passed away, just a few weeks ago, he explains quite inspiringly that Yaakov had recourse. Yaakov could have taken Lavan to the authorities. Yaakov could have received justice for his father-in-law substituting Rachel with Leah. But you know what drove Yaakov to agree to immediately start another 7-year period to work? Is that he didn't want Leah to think that she wasn't worth it. He didn't want Leah to think that she was any less than Rachel. If he worked 7 years and he was able to marry Leah, then he wasn't going to rely on the authorities and come back the next day. he was going to work an equal amount of time to be with both of his wives equally and these sisters equally. A strange time when we had our ancestors marrying siblings, but such was the way of the world at the time. And Yaakov, as we know, worked another full 7 years, but he did so in order to have the proper sensitivity and regard and honor for Leah. That's the explanation of Rav David Feinstein. After these 7 years, though, we are told that he still loved Rachel. And if you look at the text itself, the text is very hard to understand because it really he says, Vayahav gamas Rachel. He also loved Rachel mile'ah, a certain kind of fullness. The Yavodimo, as it says, in another 7 years. And it's talking about in the immediate aftermath of the marriage to Rachel, Vayar Hashem, this is the verse I wanted to read to you, Kisnua Leah, Hashem saw that Leah was hated. And there's a great commentary here because you and I have always understood it to mean that Leah wasn't loved equally. That's how we see it at this time, and Hashem took compassion upon her. He reinforced the marriage that she had by giving her a child. That's the classic understanding. That's the surface level understanding. There's more to it than that. When the verse tells us that Yaakov loved Rachel even more than Leah, and then immediately after that says that Leah was not loved equally, the commentary teaches us, commentaries say that Yaakov loved Rachel more because Leah was hated. What does that mean? That means that Leah was treated unkindly. Leah was used as a substitute because Rachel recognized that it wasn't fair, it wasn't justice what was happening to Leah. And she herself, Rachel, made sure that Leah wouldn't be embarrassed in the middle of the night, that she would share the signs that Yaakov had given to her to make sure that Yaakov wouldn't be duped. But in the end, Rachel stood up for the honor of her sister. So Yaakov loved Rachel even more because of her concern, her consideration, and her love for her sister, seeing that she was not being treated fairly, that she was being treated in a hated fashion. And that's why we read these two concepts juxtaposed one to the other, that he loved Rachel. He loved Rachel even more for what she did, her sensitivity to her sister, seeing how she was treated as a substitute, as this afterthought. One last comment about taking people's feelings into account and giving people the respect they deserve, whether we're talking about Leah, whether we're talking about Rav Silver, more contemporary times. One other example, Rav Eliyahu Lopian, great rabbi, lived in Jerusalem, previous generation, one of the great rabbis, the 1900s in Israel. He says that when the Torah tells us in this parsha that he worked for Rachel for the first 7 years, thinking that he was going to eventually marry her at the end of these 7 years, was kiyamim achadim. They were very small. It felt like it went by super quickly. And he asks a question, an important question. How could these times go on quickly? When lahavdil, when we think in a very different way, different context, when a child wants something, and you say, look, you have to wait. If anybody wants anything, but they have to wait a certain period of time, it feels very long. It doesn't feel very short. Why does the Torah tell us that for Yaakov, it felt very short, that the days went by quickly as he was waiting to be married to Rachel Imenu? He explains that every day that Yaakov went to work, keep earning his right to marry Rachel, to marry his father-in-law's daughter and his future wife. Every time he went to work, he was doing it for her. He was able to get his mind in a place, and he realized, I'm doing this on behalf of somebody else. I'm doing this for her sake, not for my sake, because I want this woman as a wife as soon as possible. Do it for her sake, so that he could serve his wife, so that this would be in the best interest of her. And when you go ahead and you're so busy and you're thinking about what you can do for somebody else, and you go to work with that mentality, then time flies by. And that's what it means, ki yamim achadim. The respect, the regard that Yaakov had for Rachel and wanting to serve her, wanting to serve his spouse. And the idea that we studied about Rachel's love and admiration for her sister and how that motivated her actions. And understanding Yaakov's sensitivity to Leah. He's willing to work another 7 years. And seeing how that runs the course and that value, those qualities get passed down generation to generation. So we see that Yaakov was able to somehow transmit this, and our matriarchs were somehow able to transmit this all the way to the 1900s to Rav Dessler's Herculean efforts to go ahead and give the honor that was necessary to Rabbi Silver. So for us, the same is true as well. What kind of sensitivity can we emulate? Can we mimic from this week's Parsha? How is it that we can say thanks and express gratitude and have the right level of interaction with those around us who benefit us? Not just by saying thanks, but also being sensitive to them as human beings and their feelings and their self-confidence and their own mental well-being. To have that level of sensitivity going out of our way to express that. That is the message of Parshas Veyetze. Thank you and have a great Shabbos.